Thank you for joining us for CBN NewsWatch. I'm Ephraim Graham. Ahead today, an end could be in sight for Israel in the war against Hamas in Gaza, including the release of the remaining hostages. This coming as we are learning more about how much damage the United States strikes did to Iran's nuclear program. We're going to take a look at President Donald Trump's foreign policy. Most of his supporters are backing his actions, but some want less American involvement in the rest of the world. But others point out it could lead to peace in the Middle East, including expanding the Abraham Accords. A setback for Planned Parenthood at the United States Supreme Court, and another could be on the way, as Senate Republicans are looking to cut taxpayer funding to America's largest abortion provider. And putting veterans first, Veteran Affairs Secretary Doug Collins tells CBN News the priority for his department as he explains how God prepared him for his role as leader of this important agency. All those stories and more right now on CBN NewsWatch.
This is CBN NewsWatch.
It is Friday, the 27th of June. We're going to begin this half hour in the Middle East, where Israel sees an end in its war against Hamas in as little as 2 weeks. And then Israel and America say they have a plan to bring peace to the area, but the plan could face some obstacles. Meanwhile, we are learning more about the impact of the United States strike on Iran's nuclear program. CBN Middle East correspondent Julie Stahl brings us the story. She's reporting from Jerusalem.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says he and President Trump have a plan to bring broad and peaceful changes to the Middle East, made possible by the humbling of Iran in the 12-day war.
This victory opens up an opportunity for a dramatic expansion of the peace agreements. We're working on this vigorously. Along with the release of our hostages and the defeat of Hamas, there's a window of opportunity here that must not be missed. Not even a single day must be wasted.
The leaders envision a halt to the Gaza war in 2 weeks, with Israel ending its military campaign and Hamas releasing the remaining 50 hostages. Hamas leaders would go into exile and 4 Arab nations would rule Gaza together. Major roadblocks could derail the plan. Hamas leaders refuse to leave Gaza, and Arab nations insist the Palestinian Authority have a role in governing a post-Hamas Gaza, a condition Israel refuses to accept. The U.S. and Israel are also signaling more Arab states are ready to join the Abraham Accords, bringing peace between the Jewish nation and millions more Muslims in the region. Thursday, top Trump administration officials gave senators a classified briefing on the destruction of Iran's nuclear program. However, Democrat and Republican senators came away with opposite impressions.
To me, it still appears that we have only set back the Iranian nuclear program by a handful of months.
They blew these places up in a major league way. Major league setback, years, not months.
The International Atomic Energy Agency says the uranium-enriching centrifuges deep underground at Fordow are no longer operational. As for the rest of Iran's nuclear program,
annihilation, total destruction, etc. I don't know. What I can tell you, and I think everyone agrees on this, there is very, very, very considerable damage.
Iran's supreme leader, in his first public statement in nearly 2 weeks, is downplaying the U.S. strikes. He says, quote, they failed to do anything significant. And he's claiming a huge victory over Israel. In Gaza, the State Department is coming alongside the U.S. and Israeli-backed Gaza Humanitarian Foundation by giving $30 million and asking other countries to donate.
A track record of distributing over 46 million meals distributed to date, all while preventing Hamas looting, is absolutely incredible and should be commended and supported.
Julie Stahl, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Here at home, President Trump's vision for America's role in the world has upended traditional Republican politics. For the most part, his supporters are behind his moves, but the war between Iran and Israel has tested the Trump doctrine and antagonized some of his supporters who want a smaller role for America in world affairs, while others say the president's actions are helping to bring about peace. CBN's chief political analyst David Brody has this story.
5 months into his second term, President Trump has displayed an unorthodox style, to say the least.
The president brings a unique style. And it behooves everybody, whether political friend or political foe, to understand that unique style.
Benhem Bel Teleblu, with the Foundation for Defense of Democracies, says to understand the Trump foreign policy, you must be a student of it.
His style is designed to cement. I don't think people are switching sides and changing minds and flipping. I think it is bolstering, hardening, calcifying the battle lines, the views, the values, and interests that one can find in the mosaic of America.
In Trump world, that mosaic hasn't worked over the past few decades. In the aftermath of 9/11, for example, the pattern included nation building and forcing freedom into countries not ready or not wanting it.
In the end, the so-called nation builders wrecked far more nations than they built, and the interventionists were intervening in complex societies that they did not even understand themselves.
Trump also believes America shouldn't be playing a global moral authority card.
I believe it is God's job to sit in judgment, my job to defend America, and to promote the fundamental interest of stability, prosperity, and peace.
And that means being transactional, such as making deals, economic and otherwise, to first give peace a chance.
The goal is not more war. The goal is to stop wars.
Retired Colonel Rob Maness believes it can be worth being unorthodox. Case in point, Trump meeting with Syria's new leader, once considered an al-Qaeda terrorist. He sees playing nice with Syria as unconventional and a potential move to isolate Iran and China, who are interested in its oil fields.
I don't like it one bit that the president decided to meet with him, but if it helps achieve that larger goal of peace through strength and reestablishing that, I have to accept it and move forward with it.
The unorthodox foreign policy began in his first term by engaging in direct diplomacy with North Korea and comparing whose nuclear button was bigger. He then challenged NATO allies to pony up more money. And then there came the Abraham Accords, a uniquely business-first approach to forge stability in the Middle East.
He's much more transactional. The Abraham Accords, I think, are a prime example of that. I think Saudi Arabia, if Trump is able to continue this approach, Saudi Arabia will probably be the next to sign on to the Abraham Accords, the major nation to sign on to that.
For now, though, the current war between Israel and Iran is front and center. Trump's desire to play peacemaker hasn't worked, at least not yet.
It behooves the president certainly to try to work peacefully to resolve the Iranian nuclear crisis, but also to remember, who is the actual enemy here and not be afraid to, just as President Reagan did, to call evil and to call a spade a spade.
It's put the president in a potentially difficult situation with a MAGA base that doesn't want to be drawn into foreign conflicts, and it's a view projected by his vocal vice president.
No more undefined missions. No more open-ended conflicts. We're returning to a strategy grounded in realism and protecting our core national interests.
And while that's been the Trump doctrine, the Israel-Iran war has muddied the waters. Influential voice Tucker Carlson accuses the U.S. of being complicit in the act of war by backing Israel against Iran.
I am saying this because I'm really afraid that my country's going to be further weakened by this. I think we're going to see the end of American empire. Obviously, other nations would like to see that, and this is a perfect way to scuttle the USS America on the shoals of Iran. But it's also going to end, I believe, Trump's presidency.
Trump brushes off the criticism, saying since he came up with the America First doctrine, he decides what it is and what it is not, saying, quote, "For those people who say they want peace, you can't have peace if Iran has a nuclear weapon." And over the weekend, President Trump made that very clear with a surgical strike on the country's key nuclear facilities. And United States military action, by the way, may not stop there.
Iran, the bully of the Middle East, must now make peace. If they do not, future attacks will be far greater and a lot easier.
He's proven that what really does matter is U.S. power, is U.S. primacy, and a vigorous defense of that will mean a more secure homeland and more secure American interests abroad.
And we're seeing it play out in real time with world events all over the globe. David Brody, CBN News, Washington.
Coming up, a setback for Planned Parenthood as the Supreme Court says states can block the country's largest abortion provider from receiving money from Medicaid. And congressional Republicans are working to stop taxpayer money from going to Planned Parenthood for years to come. We're going to have those stories for you when we come back. The Supreme Court has ruled states have the power to cut Planned Parenthood from Medicaid programs. The decision is a major win for Republican-controlled states working to reduce the number of abortions. CBN's Brody Carter has that story.
The 6-3 decision ruled that Medicaid recipients don't have the right to sue states that disqualify Planned Parenthood from the program. The decision will empower other states that want to restrict funds going to the abortion provider.
States should be free to defund and redirect their taxpayer dollars that Americans by majority do not want going toward funding abortions, to other comprehensive, real, life-affirming care in their states, and this will give them the ability to do so.
Gabriella McIntyre, legal counsel for Alliance Defending Freedom's Center for Life, told CBN's Faith Nation that the case centers on Medicaid's Any Qualified Provider rule, which normally lets patients choose any eligible doctor or clinic. But the court found Medicaid recipients can't sue if states exclude a qualified provider, even if it limits their care.
And essentially what this means in practical terms is that the states are now free, not just South Carolina, but any state that wishes to do so is free to disqualify and defund Planned Parenthood and other abortion providers from its Medicaid funding.
The case isn't technically about abortion, but it is about public funding for the nation's largest abortion provider. Conservative states like South Carolina, Texas, and Florida have long tried to defund Planned Parenthood, and this ruling gives them the green light by cutting off Medicaid dollars and eliminating patient lawsuits.
It means that South Carolinians who are enrolled in Medicaid may ultimately no longer be able to use that coverage at our health centers in South Carolina for birth control, cancer screenings, STI testing and treatment.
McIntyre says there are healthcare facilities that don't include abortion services.
There are nearly 200 other clinics in the state that provide comprehensive, real healthcare to women, things that include reproductive and family planning services, cancer screenings, things of that nature.
Congress created Medicaid to give low-income Americans access to health care. Planned Parenthood accuses South Carolina's governor of using anti-abortion politics to block basic health care for low-income communities. The organization says it will continue serving patients in the state. Brody Carter, CBN News.
Also in Washington, Senate Republicans are moving to defund Planned Parenthood with the president's Big Beautiful Bill. The measure could result in at least 200 health centers shutting down. CBN's Capitol Hill correspondent Michelle London talked with lawmakers who support this provision. They argue it will save lives and money for taxpayers.
This is 1,076 crosses.
Thousands of pink crosses covered a lawn behind Capitol Hill. Demonstrations like this cemetery in recent months have popped up in more than 100 cities as rallies by Students for Life Action and other pro-life groups have intensified. Their message to Congress is clear. Cut Medicaid funding for Planned Parenthood and other health care centers.
This is the prime time.
McMorris Rogers is joining the fight, telling CBN News this must be a priority on Capitol Hill.
Medicaid is a very important safety net for some of our most vulnerable, but it was never intended that Medicaid would be funding abortions.
In March, 150 groups signed a letter urging Congress to act. Days later, the Trump administration withheld funding by excluding many clinics from the Title X Family Planning federal grant program. Then in May, the House passed the president's Big Beautiful Bill with a measure defunding Planned Parenthood.
Not only are they the #1 provider of abortions in America, they're also the #2 provider of transitioning type services, whether it's classes or the drugs for our children that they believe, that's their #1 growth area, actually.
McMorris Rogers says we're seeing a decrease in women's health services through Planned Parenthood with no mammograms, while gender-affirming care services have increased. Planned Parenthood argues it's being targeted. The agency emphasizes on its website that its health care centers provide 9 million services to more than 2 million patients. Many of those services go to low-income people, with 55% of those patients relying on federally funded programs to get care. Penny Nance is the CEO of Concerned Women for America and urges those women to seek care at local women's health facilities instead.
Ending human life should never be part of what we do with our tax dollars.
Tracking site KFF finds the vast majority of the state and federal funding goes toward reimbursing reproductive and preventative services.
Certainly, we must defend life. That is so foundational to my faith, but it's also foundational to our nation.
If passed, the Big Beautiful Bill would cut off Medicaid reimbursement to any nonprofit that primarily offers family planning or reproductive health services, provides abortions beyond certain exceptions, and received more than $1 million in Medicaid reimbursements back in 2024. As a nationwide organization, Planned Parenthood does all three. As for the reconciliation package, Majority Leader John Thune expects a vote from the Senate before Sunday. Michelle London, CBN News, Washington.
Still ahead, the military chaplain now leading the Department of Veterans Affairs, Secretary Doug Collins, tells CBN News how his faith is guiding his mission and why leave no man behind still applies long after the battlefield. We'll hear from him right after this. Putting veterans first, that's what VA Secretary Doug Collins says is the priority for the Department of Veterans Affairs. The secretary sat down with our national security correspondent, Caitlin Burke. He shares how God has used past seasons in his life to prepare him for his mission.
Pastor, military chaplain, lawyer, congressman. VA Secretary Doug Collins has already lived many lives.
Could you have ever predicted the path that you would end up on?
Things come in seasons, and I think everything builds upon that preparation. If you'd have told me, back when I was pastoring a little church in Gainesville, Georgia, would I be, overseeing a VA with 400,000 people? Probably not. But lessons that I learned there prepared me for what I do here and all along the life. So I just encourage everybody, bloom where you're planted. It's amazing what you'll learn.
You mentioned this a little bit, but how have all of those different life experiences of your past, along with your faith, shape the leadership style that you have and your vision for the VA?
So for me, it was just, I learned how to deal with people, how to handle problems, how to think differently, be compassionate, listen, but also fight and not back down on issues that matter and do so in a way, though, that at the end of the day, we can still find ways to find some agreement. The faith aspect is like my glasses that I wear. It's just how I see everything.
What exactly was behind the decision to join the military as a chaplain?
Well, it's something I wanted to do, that service aspect. It's always been something my family, my dad was in the National Guard. I was, it was just something I was drawn to. I thought I was going to possibly go earlier in the career, but I think, again, as we said earlier, the seasons of life were not ready yet. And be able to go in and minister in an environment like that is just a unique challenge.
And I was surprised to learn that you are actually still a military chaplain. Yes. Can you talk about why it was important for you to continue that, even as you have bloomed in other areas?
It's a sense of camaraderie. It's a sense of belonging. It's a sense of something bigger than yourself.
The skills honed over 23 years as a military chaplain now serve him well, as Secretary Collins navigates the challenging aspects of his new role.
Many veterans face not just physical wounds, but invisible wounds. How are you looking to address veteran suicides?
The VA needs to be a bigger role than just simply an organization that talks about this. We've got to also encourage veterans to remember where they came from. In their services, you didn't leave anybody behind. Well, what happened to that after we got out? Do we still keep in contact with our friends? Do we still keep in contact with our veteran buddies? It's a whole cultural awareness that these are real issues. PTS is real issues. TBI, traumatic brain injury, moral injury. These things are real.
Another action that your office has taken that I'm sure hits close to home for you, you recently took action to prevent a Pennsylvania VA hospital and also any nationwide going forward from censoring its chaplains. Can you talk about why you felt you needed to step in there?
So for me, it was very simple. You're not going to, if they're preaching, they're doing their services in their faith tradition, they're going to do so regardless of who endorsed them to be there. Very easy, just a reminder of who we are and that we're not going to censor things when it comes to the matters of faith.
While he's just getting started, Collins says he's proud of the work the department has already done, especially the shift in focus back to its original mission.
We're not a jobs agency. We're not a employment group. We're not a function of something in the government. We're about service, and that's service our veterans. We only have one committed clientele, and that's a veteran, and they've earned that benefit.
This calling to service is a common thread through each season and career choice, with his faith in Christ at the center of it all.
As I start most every day, out of the gym and into my quiet times, it's just, okay, God, what do you want today? It is, let the thoughts and the words of my mouth and meditation of my heart be pleasing to you.
Last question for me. When you leave this role, how do you hope to leave the VA?
Better than where I found it. To make a difference. Simple as that.
We'll be right back with an encouraging word for your day ahead. Stay with us.
The CBN News app, 24/7 news from a Christian perspective at home or on the road. One place for all of your news. Breaking news alerts. Set daily prayer goals and pray for news stories. Read the most important news and watch CBN News Channel live. CBN News, because truth matters. Go to cbnnewsapp.com to get the app today.
Time now for your Friday Faithful. I want to leave you with this thought as we wrap another week together. If it is not good, God is not done. He promises to work all things together for your good. Trust Him and His track record. He is still God and He is still in control. With that word, make this a fabulous Friday and have yourself a wonderful weekend. Well, that will do it for this edition of CBN NewsWatch. I want to remind you can always find more of our news programs on the CBN News channel. You can also find them online at cbnnews.com at any time. We'd love to know what you think about the stories you've seen here today or any day this week. You can email us, newswatch@cbn.com. We can also be reached on Instagram, X, formerly known as Twitter, as well as Facebook. We look forward to seeing you back here come Monday. Goodbye and God bless.